turning back to the Iranian prisoner swap, while there is relief that 5 Americans have been released from the Iranian prison, there's concern as well that a prisoner swap, in this case, favored Iran. A concern Secretary John Kerry is trying to refute. Hear him here.
We had people that we felt were wrongfully held and wrongfully convicted and in prison in Iran. And we also had some people here who had committed violations of sanctions. Several of them, a good number, were months away, just literally a few months away from getting out anyway. So we don't feel like we traded something that was critical with respect to a principle.
All right, we just heard from Peter about the kidnapped Americans in Iraq. So the question I'm asking right now is, does this deal put Americans around the world at risk? Longtime national security journalist Judith Miller joins me here on set, along with former CIA analyst Fleitz. And Judy, the president is touting this as a victory. In your view, is it?
I think it is a victory, and I think that every president has engaged in these kinds of prisoner exchanges and swaps. Every president, from Republican, Democrats, and I think that we ought to give the Obama administration credit for getting people out who were held under, as you pointed out, Trish, barbarous, awful conditions. Of course they shouldn't have been held
earlier. I mean, and here we are. We did this deal with Iran. They're getting $150 billion as a result of relief, sanctions relief. Why couldn't they have released these prisoners earlier?
Because the administration wanted to keep these two processes separate in case the nuclear talks went south. If they collapsed, what would happen to the talks if they were linked to the fate of our people? It's important to keep them separate, and now, because of the timing, it looks like they were joined all along.
And then there's my other point about whether or not we are running the risk, and I'd like to get Fred's view on this. Are we running the risk of actually creating more dangerous scenarios for Americans throughout the world, because it's like we're saying, yeah, we'll negotiate with you, and you know, it just so happens that now we're dealing with 4 Americans who have been allegedly kidnapped in Iraq?
Well, I agree partially with my friend Judy Miller. It's a great thing that these prisoners, and I think we should call them what they are, they really were hostages, that these hostages were released. But we're also sending a message that hostage-taking pays. We shouldn't be grateful that Iran did the right thing. And I also might add that Secretary Kerry and President Obama have not mentioned that the government of Oman paid $500,000 in ransom for the release of these Americans. Now, maybe that's business as usual for dictatorships, but this isn't something the administration should be portraying as a great victory. It's great we got these hostages out, but we should be condemning the fact that Iran is taking hostages.
Well, Fred, you and I frequently agree on these things, but as you know, Oman is a great ally of the United States and has been instrumental in the past in such prisoner swaps and exchanges, so this is not unusual. And I want to commend Sultan Qaboos for his tireless mediation efforts on behalf of
Judy,
America.
they paid. I mean, I think that's, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what you're getting at, right? $500,000 a head. You know, we can't pay because we have said all along we'll never pay for hostages, but you effectively have someone else acting on our behalf in this case?
That's right. This is plausible deniability. We had a close friend of ours pay, which I assume this friend will be reimbursed in some other way. And Judy is right. This isn't the first time this has happened. When 3 American hikers were kidnapped by Iran a couple years ago, Oman negotiated the release and also paid ransom, which I think they described as bail, to get them out.
Yes. Exactly.
Go ahead, Judy.
And, you know, I just think that, yes, it is terrible that Iran held these people to begin with. I think Fred and I agree. Trish, everyone agrees. Yeah. But the key goal was getting them out of there and ending their torture and their mistreatment. And I'm so glad
I want to keep pursuing this, what Fred is saying, though, about the precedent that it sets. I mean, I know that you want to look at it and say it's good. And look, it is good that these prisoners have been released. But what is your fear here, Fred? I mean, how does this affect our standing in the world as you see it? And I don't believe you see this positively in any way other than these guys getting out.
It's great they're out. And frankly, if I was advising the president, I might have recommended some type of a swap. But as we announced that swap, we should have made clear that the taking of hostages is unacceptable. The brutal mistreatment of Americans in Iranian prisons is unacceptable. I haven't heard the president say that. Secretary Kerry hasn't said that. And if we don't lay that down, we're simply setting ourselves up as the world's punching bag.
Let me ask you, Judy, does this have anything to do with what happened with the American sailors? I mean, are these situations related in any way? I was a little bit surprised that John Kerry came out and effectively thanked Iran for releasing those sailors, but look at the video, the pictures that made their way around the world of our soldiers, hands on their heads, guns pointed at them. Yet another picture of them holed up in a room all together with the woman off in the corner, the American sailor, female, having to cover her head. So let me ask you, in any way were these negotiations tied in together, in your view?
I don't think they are tied together. I do think the optics of this are truly terrible, as you pointed out. And there's absolutely nothing you can do when an American boat drifts into Iranian waters. I, for one, have a lot of questions about how that happened and how the other boat went along with it, what happened to the communications, whether or not the sailors were instructed to say what they were told to say.
And do you think that Secretary Kerry was perhaps instructed to say what he said because he didn't want to endanger the situation with the other hostages?
I think there might have been a connection in that sense. You always think about the people who are being held and who, by the way, are still being held in Iran and elsewhere.
Well, you know, difficult situation for everyone, but to your point initially, it is wonderful that they are now free and they're going to be reunited with their families. Judy Miller, thank you so much. Fred Fleitz, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.